If your paycheck stopped for 30 days, would your life still feel stable, or would everything start breaking? Most people don't struggle with money because they're bad at it. They struggle because they were never shown how the system actually works. You can work for 40 years, get paid every 2 weeks, do everything right, and still feel one mistake away from disaster. That isn't accidental. That's how the game is designed. At some point, it hits quietly. You make decent money, maybe more than you ever thought you would, yet your chest tightens at the thought of missing a single paycheck. One unexpected expense feels like it could knock everything over. You don't say it out loud, but the question creeps in anyway. How can working this hard still feel this fragile? That's usually the moment people turn the blame inward. They assume they messed up somewhere. They should have saved more, invested earlier, budgeted better, chosen a different path. But what almost no one considers is that the struggle might not be personal at all. It might be structural, the result of spending a lifetime inside a system without ever being taught how that system actually functions. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You can spend your entire life earning money and never truly understand it. Not in the way that actually matters. Not the definitions you heard in school or the surface-level advice repeated online. The real system is invisible. It operates quietly in the background, shaping behavior, limiting choices, and deciding who feels calm and who lives with constant financial tension. And the reason most people never see it clearly is simple. The people who benefit most from the confusion are the same people who wrote the rules. To understand how this works, you have to start with a question that sounds basic, but changes everything once you really sit with it. What is money? Most people answer automatically. It's a medium of exchange, a store of value, a way to trade labor for goods. None of that is wrong, but none of it explains why money controls lives the way it does. At its core, money is trust. It's a collective agreement that a piece of paper or a digital number represents value. Fiat currency has no intrinsic worth. It only works because enough people believe it does. That belief is more fragile than most realize. When you receive a paycheck, you're not receiving wealth. You're receiving a promise, a claim on future goods and services, a shared agreement that when you swipe your card or pay your bills, other people will continue to honor those numbers as real value. The moment that trust weakens, the value weakens with it. Money doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists inside confidence. Centuries ago, certain groups understood something most people still don't. If you can influence trust, you can influence money. And if you can influence money, you can influence behavior. That realization shaped the modern financial system. Banking, lending, and monetary policy weren't built just to move money efficiently. They were built to stabilize control, to make the system feel complex, distant, and unquestionable to the average person. And it worked. Most people never ask what money really is or how it's created. They just accept it, they earn it, they spend it. And when there isn't enough, they assume the problem is them. That assumption is one of the system's most powerful features, because people who blame themselves don't challenge the structure around them. Nowhere is this clearer than in how banking actually works. When you deposit money into a bank, it doesn't sit untouched in a vault waiting for you to come back. Banks operate by lending. When loans are issued, new money is effectively created as digital balances. That means a massive portion of the money you interact with every day exists because someone somewhere took on debt. Your paycheck, your savings, the numbers in your account. Much of it only exists because loans exist. This is where the system's dependence on debt becomes unavoidable. Debt isn't a side effect, it's the engine. Every loan carries interest, and interest creates a mathematical requirement for growth. If a bank creates $1 million in loans with interest attached, the system now requires more than $1 million to exist in order for those loans to be repaid in full. That extra money doesn't appear automatically. It's introduced through more lending, more borrowing, more expansion. This is why the system constantly pushes growth. Not because growth is morally good or bad, but because without expansion, the math collapses. The structure requires new debt to service old debt. That reality filters down into everyday life in ways people rarely connect. It's why prices rise over time. It's why standing still financially feels like moving backward. It's why people can work harder year after year and still feel like they're barely keeping up. Look at the scale of it. Household debt in America has become a permanent feature of life. Mortgages, student loans, auto loans, credit cards. Owing money is treated as normal, expected, even responsible. And when you zoom out to the national level, the numbers become almost impossible to emotionally process. Trillions in government debt, interest costs that alone rival the budgets of entire countries. Yet somehow individuals are taught to feel guilty for struggling under this weight, as if personal discipline alone could override a system built on leverage. At this point, some people think they can simply refuse to participate, that they'll avoid debt, live modestly, and step outside the game. In theory, that's possible. In practice, the system doesn't rely on theory. It relies on psychology. And the first psychological hook is status. Money used to be about survival. Now it's about identity. What you drive, where you live, how you travel, what you wear. These aren't just purchases, they're signals. Proof that you're doing okay. Proof that you're not falling behind. From a young age, people are trained to equate consumption with success. Advertising, social media, and social pressure reinforce the same message every day. A better life looks more expensive. The most effective part of this design is that you don't have to wait to afford it. Debt lets you access the lifestyle now. You can look successful today and pay for it for decades. That's why debt feels good at first. It delivers the emotional reward immediately, but the cost comes later, quietly, in the form of reduced freedom. When your income is already promised to payments, your options shrink. You can't easily walk away from a job you hate. You can't take a risk on something uncertain. You can't downshift without consequences. And because the trap is padded with comfort, it doesn't feel like imprisonment. It feels like normal life. That's why it's so effective. People in debt are predictable. They need stability. They need income. They can't afford disruption. The system doesn't need force when it has obligation. The second psychological hook is confusion. Financial products are not complicated by accident. Fees, interest rates, minimum payments, and fine print are designed to extract value quietly. When people don't fully understand what they're signing up for, they blame themselves when things go wrong. They internalize shame instead of recognizing design. Confusion keeps people compliant. Clarity would create resistance. But here's where the story shifts. Because there's another group operating inside the same system who experience it very differently. Not because they're inherently smarter or more disciplined, but because they understand how money behaves. The wealthy don't reject debt. They use it strategically. When most people borrow money, they borrow to consume. Cars, upgrades, experiences. Their debt increases, but their assets don't. Or worse, the assets they buy depreciate. When wealthy individuals borrow, they often borrow to acquire assets, businesses, property, investments that generate income or appreciate over time. Their debt grows, but their assets grow faster. This difference changes everything. The same tool that traps one group empowers another. In some cases, the interest paid on certain types of borrowing is structured in ways that reduce its impact through tax advantages. That means the cost of money is lower for those using it to build, while higher for those using it to consume. The system doesn't reward effort equally. It rewards position and structure. This is where compound interest becomes the dividing line. Most people experience compounding as a force working against them. Interest on credit cards, fees piling up, balances that grow even when payments are made. The wealthy experience compounding on the other side, on assets that quietly grow year after year. The math is simple but brutal. $10,000 invested at 10% annually grows into over $450,000 over 40 years. Not because of constant effort, but because time and compounding do the heavy lifting. The problem is timing. To benefit from compounding, you need capital early, and the system ensures most people spend their early years servicing debt instead of accumulating assets. This creates a gap that feels unfair because it is. Many wealthy individuals start with advantages that allow their money to start working sooner. Family resources, networks, reduced friction. Meanwhile, the average person spends decades just trying to stabilize. By the time momentum appears, the clock is already ticking toward retirement. The system rewards those who arrive early and punishes those forced to arrive late. Understanding this doesn't instantly free you, but it does something more important. It removes misplaced shame. Once you see the structure clearly, you stop asking why you're failing and start asking how the system shapes outcomes. That shift changes behavior. You begin to make different choices, even within the same constraints. You don't need to signal wealth you don't have. You don't need to finance an image. You start seeing debt as a claim on your future rather than a harmless convenience. You may not opt out entirely, but you stop playing the role the system expects you to play. You probably won't become a billionaire. Most people won't. But you can build a life where money is a tool instead of a constant source of anxiety, where unexpected expenses are inconvenient, not catastrophic, where your job supports your life instead of consuming it. That difference isn't small. It's the difference between living reactively and living intentionally. Now you understand the rules most people never see. Money is trust. Debt drives the system. Growth is required. Status fuels consumption. Confusion maintains control. And those who understand the structure use it differently from those who don't. The only question left is what you do with that understanding. If this changed the way you see money, and you want more breakdowns that expose the system shaping your life, subscribe. New videos go deeper into the mechanics behind income, debt, wealth, and power. The more clearly you see the game, the better your chances become. And the next episode might be the one that finally changes how you play.